So if in the chat, like, just reflect on what would you hope to get from this conversation, so that, you know, when the hour's over, you're going to say this was really valuable. And if you can just plug a bunch of that into the chat, just so I can be aware.
Okay, so there's our question. Oh, I just sent that to Lucy. That was odd. Sorry, Lucy. Let's send that to everyone. Okay. There. Okay, so we got that up.
Great.
All right, well, we've got, what do we got? 16 people on. Let me just see how we're doing for having people muted. Martine, Dominic, we'll keep the man of the hour unmuted.
Great.
Okay. You ready, Dom?
I am. So let's go ahead. I see the record is on. So
record is on. Yes,
you kick us off, and then we'll go.
All right. So thanks for coming, everyone. We're we're here with Dominic Scafidi, who is I can't say enough good things about the guy. He's as we all know, he's very generous with his time and sharing his expertise and knowledge. And I'm very, very grateful for him giving us this hour. And what we're going to be talking about are the essentials, or coaching 101, the essentials of coaching. And I think with that, we're just going to get straight into it. Dominic's bio is long. I'm not going to bother with it. So Dominic, I will hand the reins over to you to get us started, and rock, everyone.
Okay, so just maybe show of hands, or on the, you can also do the raise hand on that, is I know from looking out and seeing the names here that there are people who are already coaching. And so you are coaches, you are already coaching. So I just want to sense up who already is a coach and does coaching and all of that. So yeah. And I've seen you around. I know you are. Okay, so when we go through this, I also really want to hear from your own experiences, and some of the stuff I say will resonate or not resonate, and then we can have a conversation about that. What started this is that when I look out into the community, and by the way, if you've seen me around, you've probably seen other webinars I've done. I did a webinar with Ann Cush more than a year ago, and that one was about what is coaching versus teaching the three principles. Because there's a little bit of a pet peeve, but it does drive me nuts when I hear that someone is coaching, and all that when I observe what's happening or I listen to their comments, the only thing I can see is that they are teaching or preaching something. And so there is a distinction between what coaching is compared to teaching and preaching things that you know, or things that you want to share, or things that you want to teach other people. And so it sort of started with this, that as people in our community talk about coaching other people, we really, Michael and I were having conversations where we determined, there are such sort of basics that if people just understood a few basics and at least held those in their mind, it would instantly make their coaching conversations much more effective. So that's the sort of the reason for this. We want to help sort of upskill everybody in the 3P community who has any intention of coaching other people or making a difference with other people via coaching. This will not help you, potentially. This will not help you be more grounded in 3 principles, what we're going to talk about here. So our assumption is that you know that you can access that in so many different ways. There's lots of videos, lots of things that you can do, books you can read, and they will help deepen your grounding in 3 principles. However, one of the things that I have seen along my coaching journey, and why 3 principles related to me so well, is that when it comes to pure coaching, and what I mean by that is pure coaching, real coaching, not just you say you're a coach, but as you understand what real coaching is, the alignment between pure coaching and what the grounding we have in the three principles is incredibly in sync. It is very harmonious. And one of the things I might say is that pure coaching is a wonderful expression of a strong grounding in the three principles. It is a very clean expression of how you might interact with another human being from a coaching perspective. If you were strongly grounded in three principles, this is the way that you would probably interact with another person, right? Is via a coaching conversation. So you should see lots of resonance here. And by the way, I would also appreciate if you look from your 3P grounding. If there's anything that I say that seems inconsistent to you, I would like you to raise that so that we can address it. So I think a starting point, and by the way, just in context, I do lots of this coaching skills training in large organizations. So I work with leaders and people managers. And I've been doing this for years, and I've worked with hundreds and hundreds of leaders and people managers, executives in organizations, in training them to be more effective coaches. The sort of what my program is about is helping you to be a great coach rather than a good boss. So these leaders in organizations are bosses. They're the boss of a team or individuals. And I am trying to help them to be great coaches rather than good bosses. And so that's a lot of what I'm talking about will come out of that. So a starting point, and I have this starting point with them as well, is if you're going to do coaching, it is important to understand what is the purpose of coaching. You are choosing with this individual, you're choosing to have a coaching conversation. So what is the purpose of a coaching conversation? Any guesses? How do you see that, the purpose of that conversation?
Do you want us to type this in, or do you want us to...
You can speak. Thanks, Lynn. Go ahead.
Either or, Lynn.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I think it's to help people get unstuck or get into some point from point A to point B.
Great. So it's helping them get somewhere, right?
Yes.
So they may say, I want to get unstuck. I want to have a business. I want to get along better with so-and-so. There's something, right? It's helping them do that. Yeah. Yes, Wendy, go ahead. Unmute.
Oh, where's Wendy at?
Okay, I got it. Hi. I would say the purpose of a coaching conversation is to set a table for somebody to be able to tap in. So even though they may say, I want a better relationship, what might happen after transformative coaching conversations is they say, I want out of this relationship, because they've touched something that is their truth, their wisdom is able to come forward. So for me, it comes, that's what the purpose of coaching conversation is for that person to get much more clear about who they are and what they're about.
Great, and you're touching on there, Wendy, a transformative approach to this, and you're absolutely right, because people come to us for all kinds of things, and at a sort of novice level of coaching, you would just kind of zero in on what they're saying and kind of try to get them there. At more skilled levels of coaching, you will spend a little bit of time wondering, what's behind that? Is that real, right? Is that really actually what you want, right?
Right. And that, if there's any other healthcare providers in the room here today, that comes directly from, oh, doctor, my head is killing me. I really need opiate medicine for me to get over my headache. Well, it turns out the person is, whatever, under stress, or or it turns out they've been sleeping on rocks and no wonder their head hurts and they don't need medicine. They just need to get the rocks out of their pillow. So there's the express, what we call in medicine, the chief complaint, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there's an equal distance between that's what they're complaining about and the remedy is exact. It could be something different. So a little digging is in order. Yeah.
Love it. Great. I love the metaphor in there, because what you're bringing up is that many times people will come to you, they've already diagnosed and figured it out. See, so my problem is with my boss, and what I need is some strategies on how to get along better with my boss and that. So they sort of come with the whole package, and then they tell you immediately what they want. So you do, as a coach, if, again, a more novice coach would just dive in and say, good, let's look at communication strategies for your boss. And, you'd run off in that. A more skilled coach will make sure that, is this really what you want? Is this really what you're working for? So there's that. One thing I would say that for us to all look, I'm talking about professional coaching. And so as you think about professional coaching, you will be able to apply this as, in personal life, I'm coaching my kids, or I'm, whatever. You can kind of think about but imagine in professional coaching, I'm an executive coach. All my work is in large organizations. So, so somebody pays me to coach. So to work with, a CFO or CIO, so they pay me to coach them for a particular period of time. So there is always in coaching, there is some outcome, some change, some kind of performance which is being asked for. And this is always in the world of form, right? In 3 principles, we get confused because a lot of 3 principles is about formless and helping people understand their formless nature and seeing through to it. However, nobody pays you to coach unless they want something in the world of form. And so when it comes to the effectiveness of coaching, is it shows up as a difference in the world of form. Now, we could take basics, like we could take, sports coaching, and you take like a Tiger Woods or whatever who hires, I think in his case, I think he has a putting coach, a driving coach. He may even have a mindset coach, who knows, right? But he pays these people, and then you tell me, if he worked with a putting coach over a period of 3 months or 6 months, and there was no improvement in the putting, what do you think would happen? Yeah, the coach is fired. The coach is fired because people pay because they expect value in return. All of that value shows up somehow in the world of form. It has a difference in the world of form. And specifically, when I'm working with leaders and managers and they go through the coaching program, I say, and I do this over months, I work with them over months, and I say to them, let's fast forward here 6 months, 9 months out, maybe next year. And I say that John is, John is a much more effective coach today than he was 1 year ago. If I was to make that statement, John has developed his coaching skill. He is a much more effective coach today than he was 1 year ago. What is the evidence that tells me that he is a more effective coach? And when it comes to business and leaders and managers, the only way I would know that is if the people that report to John, his employees, are now at a higher level of performance. Their outcomes are better, more improved. This is the only evidence I would have to suggest that John, 1 year later, is a more effective coach than he was 1 year ago. People get into he's more grounded. He has a deeper understanding of the human, whatever it is, because that's what it gets into when, in 3 principles, they're looking at your grounding. But here's the deal. If that grounding does not translate into making a difference in somebody else's life, then you are ineffective. You are a very grounded human being, and you can have incredible conversations. You are ineffective as a coach, because as a coach, that all has to make a difference in somebody else's life. So this understanding the purpose of coaching, and it is in the world of form, is an important starting point. Now, what is coaching by definition? There's a bunch of definitions, but I use a couple of them in the training that I do. One by John Whitmore, who wrote a book called Coaching for Performance. His book is Coaching is Unlocking People's Potential to Maximize Their Own Performance. It's helping them to learn rather than teaching them. So that's one definition. Another one is coaching is the art of facilitating the performance, learning, and development of another. So here you've got a person. We can translate this not just in work performance, but we got someone who's not in a relationship. They want to be in a relationship. We have someone who struggles with money and they want to not struggle with money. We have someone who is, experiencing lots of anxiety as a result of the work they do, and they want to be more calm and centered about it. So this is about unlocking that person's potential, their own potential to make some change or impact in this thing that they're focused on. So it is distinct, and in one of these it says it is helping them to learn rather than teaching them. Because there are different ways that you could help a person. One of the ways is you can teach them, sit them down in front of you, talk at them for an hour, and hopefully they'll retain some of that. All of what about, their situation and how they should handle it. That would be a kind of a teaching, sharing all that with them. But coaching is distinct from that. By the way, if you want to learn more about this distinction between coaching and teaching, coaching and mentoring, coaching and, therapy and consulting, all of that, there we can post a link. There's the webinar I did with Ann Cush a year or so ago that kind of gets into more of what those distinctions are.
And we can post that on the page then.
Yeah. So just to check in, I don't know if there were anything, Michael, I'll have you watch the chat if there's anything that becomes a question or whatever. Otherwise, we'll keep going. So far we've got, that coaching will have an impact. It will have an impact in the world of form. And what we know that coaching is it's some sort of an interaction. Let me say some sort of a conversation, a way of being with other people, such that you, out of that way of being with them, bring something out in them which would not have otherwise occurred. And so this is very consistent with 3P, because what happens in coaching is everything that happens in coaching arises from within the client. So your skill is in a way of interacting such that something new arises in them. Now, if you think about 3 principles, if you're strongly grounded in 3P, what do you know? Well, you know that the person in front of you is connected to mind. They are the infinite potential and possibility of mind. They are the infinite potential and possibility of source energy, the universe, infinite intelligence. So if you imagine, your skill is in connecting them to that and allowing them to tap into that for anything that they need. Coaching is very much doing that. If you took a different modality, which is to say, he has trouble with his boss, or he has trouble in his marriage, and I'm a real expert on that because I've read a lot of books and I understand conflict. And so what I'm going to do is, listen for what he's doing wrong, and then I'm going to teach him. I'm going to teach them a different way of talking. I'm going to teach them a different way of interacting. So that's a different modality. And what that would suggest is that the answer will come from outside of them by someone far smarter like me. And so the answer will come from outside of them, and I will give it to them so that it can solve their problems. That is not coaching. So if you are unable to help them to see it, then it's just a matter of your skill level as a coach, right? So as your skill level improves, you're able to get them to see more and more. So we have a bit of the sort of the starting foundation. The other part, I guess, that would be essential. If you've got to, it's useful to understand what is a coaching conversation. So, because if you watch a coaching conversation, what it looks like is, well, it's a nice conversation. Like, look at those two people. They are having this wonderful conversation. When I do coaching demonstrations in front of a class of leaders or managers, I will coach someone in the front. I'll do 15, 20 minutes of coaching. And then when we're done, sometimes they'll say, well, that was a great conversation, right? And here's the deal. A coaching conversation is distinct. So it is distinct from a conversation you would have with a friend. A coaching conversation is distinct from a very nice chat. And yet it can look like it. Wow, they had such a nice chat. With such a good feeling in that conversation when you watched it, right? And a coaching conversation is distinct from a very nice chat. It is distinct from a conversation you might have with a friend. And there are elements that make that conversation distinct. And, a simple way to look at it is I say that in any coaching conversation, I will likely see and notice three things. So one of the things that makes this conversation distinct, and this is overall, is a coaching conversation is an intentional conversation. It is an intentional conversation. It is not a nice chat. It is an intentional conversation. So that means this conversation is going somewhere. It has a purpose to it. Without that in it, this is what happens. Your friends come to you and they'll say, I'm having all this trouble at work, and this is going on, and my boss is doing this, and so you can have a nice chat. You can listen to them. You can share your experience with them. They share theirs with you, and what happens is you all have this great conversation, and you agree with them, and that's why they keep you as their friend. Part of why they keep you as their friend is because you're in agreement often with the way that they're seeing the world and all of that. And so these nice chats happen. And that is not coaching. Otherwise, people wouldn't hire coaches. They would just go talk to anybody, right? So coaching, on the other hand, is intentional. It's got a beginning, middle, and an end. It's going somewhere. Now, because it's going somewhere, it has an objective. The objective for me as a coach is to take the client where they want to go. That is the intention of a coaching conversation. So if some of you know, I talk a lot about energy, and I pay a lot of attention to energy. The energy in a coaching conversation is what I am listening for is an energy in a particular direction. And what I am using in a coaching conversation is that person's energy for where they want to go, and then to support them to go where they want to go. Here's what doesn't happen in a coaching conversation. I do not use my energy to get them anywhere. That would be pushing. That would be asserting. That would be me knowing more than they do. And when I hear where they want to go, I would get behind them and start pushing them in that direction. That is not coaching. So what happens in coaching is I listen for and tap into their own energy to get to some outcome or some place. And that's what I'm listening for. So as that happens, that tells us essential elements within a coaching conversation. And that is, in the beginning, I must have a coaching agreement, which means, where are we going? What is this conversation about? There are a million ways of asking this same question, but I am not having a coaching conversation unless I understand what you want, unless you have articulated what you want. So we have 30 minutes, we have 15, whatever we have in a coaching conversation. Somewhere early on, you know, you're going to hear a couple of things. I'm going to be saying, what are we talking about? And then you're going to say, well, you know, it's my business. I'm not earning enough revenue, whatever it is. So far, all I've heard is a topic. All I've heard is what we're talking about. I still have not heard yet any intention for this conversation, because you and I can commiserate about, yeah, it's hard to get business and blah, 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 and the troubles you're having, whatever, right? So next part, I hear the topic, what we're talking about. And then the next thing I want to know is, well, you know, we have 30 minutes right now. If this conversation was of any value to you, if this actually made a difference for you, at the end of the conversation, how would you know? Now, that's just one way I say it. I say it a million different ways. But early on, I've got to know, what are you after here? What are you wanting to get from the conversation? In the absence of that, coaching is not possible. I want you to get that. If you don't know what the other person wants, coaching is not possible. Do anything else. You cannot coach. So what you should do is have a nice conversation. Don't attempt to coach, because if you attempt to coach, you would only be attempting to coach based on your own wisdom for what they need. But that's not what coaching is. They have their own wisdom. Hold them capable. By the way, that slogan, hold them capable, is an essential in coaching. The person in front of me is capable. This is very consistent with 3 principles. I have a person in front of me who is the infinite potential of this universe. And they're struggling with something in life, or they're stuck, or they have some sort of thing. So get clear about what they think they need. Because you cannot have a conversation unless they want something. You cannot have a coaching conversation unless they want something. You can have a different kind of conversation, just not coaching. So that's the energy that's driving a coaching conversation. And notice, it's coming from the client, not from you. Right? So when they're paying you, if it's paid coaching, when they're paying you, they have some desire. Hold them capable of understanding what the desire is, and also of understanding what it is they want out of that particular conversation. Having said that, to be fair, some people show up and have no idea what they want, which is okay, because now I understand maybe what this conversation may be about. However, I am not going to presume it. I will want agreement to the intention here. So I'm saying, wow, I'm hearing you are really confused. I'm hearing lots of, things that you're talking about. And so is it clarity? Would if we spent 30 minutes and you became more clear about this issue for yourself, would that be worthwhile? Is that so you see, I'm not running off to determine what they need. I hold them capable. I am checking to have them determine what they need. Actually spending some time in the beginning of coaching in just this idea of what is it you want is incredibly valuable. by the way, one of the things most junior coaches, at a more novice level, they take at face value what the client says and they run off into a coaching conversation now to achieve the goal that the client said. At mastery levels of coaching, you could be spending a quarter, a third, even up to half the time in continuing to clarify. So what is it you think you really need? So what do you think would be of value to you here? Like literally time. My favorite story of this, I had this CIO, so technology guy. He comes onto the phone. We have a 1-hour session booked. That's part of a normal, we talk every 2 weeks. He comes onto the phone and he's like throwing out acronyms like crazy. He's got, I can't believe they cut the budget and they expect me to implement the ERP system and then blah, 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 and I have no idea what he's talking about. So as a coach, I'm not an expert. He's just going on, right? So I get to, wow, sounds like a lot is going on. And so, we have an hour right now. So what do you think you really need from this conversation to be able to help you? And he goes, wow, how do they expect me to implement an ERP system while I have less resources and acronyms going up? I have no idea what he's talking about. This went on. We kept going back and forth. I keep going like, well, seems like there's a lot of moving parts here, and I wasn't getting anywhere. It was all in this confusion and all of this piece. Eventually, we're about 20 minutes into a 1-hour session. I'm about to give up and let's just talk then, because I don't know what's going on. We'll just talk. And I attempt it one more time. I said, I don't know how I said it, but I said something about, well, there's a lot of things you've talked about, a lot of moving pieces. So imagine this call made a difference and you got off the call in 1 hour and you had something that's missing for you right now. This time I asked the question and the guy goes silent. Big pause. Next thing he comes on and he says, oh, I get it. This has been so helpful. Thank you very much. Click dial tone, right? Well, before he clicked, he says, I'll talk to you in a couple of weeks. Click dial tone. I have no idea what he got from that. I have no idea. I never asked later, anything like that. But that's an example, if you look at that, what sounds like this technique in the beginning around clarifying the objective is the beginning of something useful for the client. And the reason I bring this up is because you would think it is something useful for the coach. You would think that, hey, I'm doing this because I'm trying to coach and I got to understand this. But everything is coaching is to serve the client. Everything in coaching serves the client. None of this is for you. So all of these principles, these processes are really to serve the client. So by him having to achieve that level of clarity for himself, it was interesting because what he determined was he determined exactly what he needed. And he also determined what he didn't need, which was any more conversation with me. So he was able to just have his insight, whatever it was, and run off and sort of handle that. Okay, so structure of a coaching conversation, it's intentional. The beginning of it, I need to know where we're going. So I want to know what we're talking about and where we're going. What is the outcome from this conversation? The other part of a coaching conversation that makes it a coaching conversation is the way that it ends. So these are bookends. We've started with an intention and a direction where we're going. And then there's an ending, which is, what the ending really does is it says, so what have you gotten out of this conversation? So it's a way of capturing what's been the value of this 1 hour together. What is different now versus the beginning? You started the conversation wanting, a different way to interact with your boss or whatever it is you said. What have you seen about that now? So notice how it sort of completes and closes this conversation. The other element that tends to show up in an ending of a coaching conversation is what's next for you. What meaning, so with this insight, this new learning, this new thing that you've seen, so what will be different now? What is something you are either going away to do, or what will be different? And there's a million ways of asking that question, but you're helping people to, remember I said coaching is in the world of form. You are helping them to imagine now in the world of form what kind of difference this will make and what difference maybe it already has made. So that's the beginning and the end. The middle of a coaching conversation is really, I'm going to label the entire thing enlightenment, right? Because enlightenment, we do stuff, but what happens is you see more. Okay, so you got started because you're stuck, because you want something. Obviously, you can't see. Otherwise, you wouldn't be having this conversation. We end with, now you see something and you're clear, you have clarity, you've got a way, action forward, something, right? So that's kind of end. And in the middle of it, what we're doing is turning lights on, more lights around the thing that you are looking at so that you can see more clearly. As your awareness, insight expands, raises around the issue about which you are talking, as you see more, you will be able to, in terms of end of conversation, Michael Neal says this, as you see more, as you see differently, you can do differently. So the middle part is spent is let's call it that. What's happening is enlightenment. Just checking in. Michael, anything to respond to?
No, we're pretty good so far, Dom. I think there's a few comments. Inger's making a comment, when she coaches, whether she's talking to friends or kids, about how she's directing to alternatives or a broader solution base rather than a specific problem solving. If I'm using this way of talking to my friends, I'm much more of a coach who support what they know inside instead of pointing them what to do.
Cool.
Yeah. So no, I think we're good. We're good.
Awesome. All right. So I've given you a structure of a conversation. So by the way, in International Coach Federation, which credentials, it's the largest credentialing body in the world of professional coaches. In most large organizations, in the world, there's a lot of confusion about what's a coach. Everyone can call themselves a coach. But what happens is you get into large organizations, not even they know what a coach is, right? So even in large organizations, HR, a lot of HR, they don't know what a coach is either. Right? So you could walk in, say you're a coach, it's all like that. But what they've done as a shortcut now is they'll ask, are you credentialed with the ICF? If you're credentialed with the ICF, that's fine. Then yes, you can coach our people, because that speaks to something about your understanding of what coaching is, your competency, all that. So there are certain elements there, and so that what I talked about in the structure is essential within competencies of the ICF. In other words, if you're having a conversation and you're not on, this is about being on the client's agenda, then that's a problem, right? Like if you're in there to teach them something, or you're in there because you want to share something with them, that is a fail as far as an understanding of what coaching is and a competency or ability in terms of being able to carry it out. So, and most importantly is the fact that you don't understand what coaching is. So there, it kind of gets into ethics around coaching and all of that. So this leads to, let's talk about some essentials. I already gave you an essential which said you hold the client capable. That is when I was training years ago, when I was training this years ago, before I came across 3 principles, I used to speak about that as if it was a mindset. I would say, yeah, that it's like, you got to hold the mindset that the other person is capable. It's like you have to believe it, right? So that's how I was training it. After I did the principles and I sort of was more and more grounding in the principles, I said, wait a minute, this isn't a mindset. This is actually true. Hang on a second. It is not a mindset that the other person is capable. This is another human being. This is actually true. And so when you know that that is true, it is essential in terms of the way you are in the coaching conversation. So today, I'll challenge leaders and managers around, I'll be a lot more direct about the fact, this is true. And if you don't see it as true when you're interacting with that employee or whatever, then there is a problem there in that you can't coach. So in other words, you can't coach someone when you're holding them as less than capable. You're holding them as less than having the potential and possibility of the universe within them. Because if they're not capable and they don't have access to infinite intelligence, then the trouble is they would need you. That's the problem. And so you can't coach because then that wouldn't be coaching. Because now you're dealing with this less than human being and you're trying to help them achieve their own goal. And the only way that you can do this is by teaching them things that they don't know and pointing them to, knowledge that you have that they don't have. And so you can do that, but that would be like teaching, mentoring, preaching. It would be something else, but it's not coaching. So the ethics in coaching is that the client is capable, and I am always on the client's agenda. They determine what this conversation is about. They determine where we go in this conversation. So in other words, even if I get a bright idea, like, there's this thing I learned about mind, thought, and consciousness that I think really plays into what's going on here. So can I share that with you? Notice the way I went to this, right? Can I share this with you? Gets to another essential in coaching. I don't share it with them. I'm asking if I can. Why I'm asking if I can is because they are in charge of this conversation. They determine whether we go into that or don't go into that. So permission in coaching is essential. They lead. I do not lead. So I can have some insight in this conversation. I might see that this could be helpful. And I can ask them, if we were to talk about this for a little while, this may be helpful, whatever. And can we go off here? And they say, sure. Most people are polite. They'll say, absolutely. If you think it can be helpful, let's go there. So now I have permission and I begin sharing some things. And I have to tell you that I remember a number of years ago, because I used to think, oh, what a stupid technique this is. Like you've got to ask for permission and whatever, as opposed to understanding this is a respectful way. This is a perfect expression of how to have a conversation with someone who you are holding as capable. And I remember a few years ago, someone saying to me, we sort of chatted for a little while, and then they said, yeah, this isn't helping. I want to go back to X. Right? And so it was like, yeah, because I sucked as a 3 principles teacher and preacher. So they directed me right back to, yeah, whatever this was. Yeah, it's a great sidetrack here, but I need to get back to what I want out of this conversation. And so we sort of flipped right back. So, as a coach, you're serving them. You're not on your agenda ever. So essentials, I hold them capable. I am always on their agenda. They lead the conversation. This conversation is only about what they want, and they direct it anywhere they want to go. That's there. Just looking at what else were essentials. So this
asking permission, Dominic.
Yes. So the permission or space. In other words, that idea of permission is I am paying attention to the space that we have. Permission is one thing. I'm listening for is there permission? Is there an openness? Is there a readiness for coaching? That you got to pay attention to, because if it's not there, you can't coach. So that you have to set it up. You've got to build this context of you are supporting them to get what they want. And by the way, instead of talking a lot about permission, you can, words, as Abraham Hicks says, words don't teach, only life experience can. So if you don't believe me that you need permission, that you want to listen for permission in coaching, I will give you a homework exercise. And that is to, with your significant other, with your kids, or with any friend, as they're talking to you, I am sure you can hear opportunities how they can improve their lives and become better human beings. And I just invite you to start coaching them. So whenever you hear that opening, that kind of an opportunity, I have tried this. I'm only telling you because I have tried this with my wife when she would come home and talk about work and the challenge that was going on. And then because I'm a trained coach, I realized that I'm in a position to be able to help. And so then I did. Right? So then I would just start coaching. And very quickly, I understood that permission to coach is essential. So it is not possible for you to coach without the right permission. So that's another essential in there.
Is it fair to say, Dominic, that sort of stems from the original coaching agreement or coaching contract that you set up at the beginning of the dialogue?
It is for sure in that. In other words, it sort of breaches everything because I'm not holding someone capable because all of a sudden I know more than them and I know what they need. And I'm not even checking what they need because I'm going to coach them already. I've seen the opportunity, right? So I'm diving in. So and the energy of this, notice the energy of this is that I am about to accomplish something in this coaching. Notice that energy? And it doesn't work that way. In coaching, I'm listening for what they want. As a coach, I support what they want. I use the energy of what they want to help them get where they want to go.
Dominic, we are, I could listen to you all day, as you know. We've got 10 minutes scheduled. Kirsten has a really good question.
Yes.
She's asking if you can elaborate a little bit on the midpoint. So
yes.
Can you elaborate on the middle enlightenment bit in terms of staying within coaching, not teaching? So the idea of shining a light and broadening.
Yeah. So this is going to sound really prescriptive because I'm going to give you a bunch of tips and stuff like that. Ignore me, but understand in the world of form, this is helpful. How do you create enlightenment in the world of form? So mostly the skill in this is around helping someone else see. So because the trick here is what do they see? How do they see something different? Because you as a coach, you're standing outside, so it's really easy for you. It's like you'll get all kinds of insight. I know exactly what's wrong here. I see it, right? But your insights make no difference in their performance. Right? So the thing that'll make a difference in their performance is them struggling with and seeing something in a new way or seeing it more differently, etc. So here's the, tips would be ask, don't tell, right? So in coaching, they say mostly, if you look at the coaching conversation, it is ask, don't tell. It is mostly questions with very little telling is happening in a coaching conversation. Another kind of tip in enlightenment is that the client is speaking 70-80% of the time. The coach is doing very little speaking. Now, let's look at those two things and why is that helpful in enlightenment? In a way, the client comes to you and the only reason they are stuck having a problem is, you're all 3P folks. What do you think is at the root of their problem? Is thought. Okay, so if you're grounded in 3P, anything that they're having an issue about, any problem they're having, anything they're struggling with, it is completely made up of thought, right? So now you as a 3P grounded coach, at least you know that, which will make you better and more effective than most coaches, because most coaches will actually believe that they have a problem that needs to be solved. But you're a 3P grounded coach, at least you understand the problem is made of thought. Enlightenment in the middle is if you could loosen up the thought a little bit to create some space so that more light could get in, so that they can see a little bit more, right? Now, when people come to you and they have a problem, what it is usually, and I'll do this sort of illustrate it. It's kind of like I come to you and, you know, like the guy who came to me on that first call is like, oh my God, I've got this project going on and it's crazy. I haven't even started. I'm not sure what to do. I've never done anything like this before. And now notice how much noise is in my head, right? So notice, right? So that's a problem right there. I cannot see. No, it's like, no wonder I don't know what to do. This is the snow globe. There's so much noise in my head. I couldn't see if I wanted to. So you, in the middle of the coaching, if you're doing enlightenment, what do you want to do? Well, I want to create a space for thinking. I want to create some space so that we can slow down. And so how do I do that? I really, really listen. So if I ask, don't tell, I'm using questions and then really, really listening. So for example, if I say, what's really important about this? Boy, I can see you're really struggling with this. What's really important about this? And so what I've used there is an open-ended question. So that's the other thing. The kind of questions in the enlightenment phase are open-ended. They are not yes or no questions. They are, you know, these sorts of things that require thinking. So you ask a question, you stop and you listen. And now this is my theory. I don't know that there's any research for this, but basically if you suddenly ask this question and it's deep, if it's a good question, it'll often stop the client. How you know is they'll say, wow, that's a really good question. Kind of stops them in their tracks. Then they go into their head. And what do you do at this point? Shut up! Because you need to understand that what's happening now is mind is settling. Clarity is starting to come in. Be quiet. Right? So now the client is thinking. Now here's the thing. Again, you're listening. When the client now expresses to you, wow, you know, what's really important about this is that I want to be promoted, or I want to make a difference on this project, or whatever it is. So what just happened is that they took this jumble of noise in their head, which is all this crazy thought. It kind of settled down. And then some way, somehow, they had to express to this other human being, in a way that you could even understand what they said. Now, this is my theory. I don't know if it's true. But just in that little exercise, I say that you have helped them clear up the issue like 80%. They went from noise into a little more quiet, and then they had to speak to you. By the time you speak this noise, you are clarifying what this is about to such a degree. So here's the thing. Who has achieved clarity is the client, not you. Because normally we think we're asking questions. Again, novice coaches are asking questions because they're trying to get more information. Oh, I'm trying to get clear on your issue. I'm not sure I understand it fully. Sort of like, and you never will, because it's not your issue. But the reason you ask the question, right? What's clear about that? What isn't clear about that is not for yourself. These questions do not serve the coach. These questions serve to generate clarity for the client. A lot of my clients, by the way, they're technically, I don't know, they got these functions they're in I don't understand. They've got these teams, organizations, and industries I don't know anything about. I'm not that expert in any of that. So they're not educating me. They're not here to tell me about their industry or any of that. When I'm asking them questions, their answers, I'm expecting that they hear their answers. So in my listening, they get to hear themselves think. That's what the enlightenment part is. They get to hear themselves. So they are enlightened from the speaking. They are enlightened because you are listening, you are creating a space. And the third thing that you are doing is because you are not them, you are asking questions that are challenging. I don't mean you're going to ask challenging questions. Your questions are necessarily challenging because you don't think like they do. Furthermore, you have one more advantage because you are grounded in 3P. Your questions will be particularly challenging because you're not sucked into their problems, right? So, but your questions that you are asking are knocking around and challenging their way of thinking. So, you know, because they could say, well, I don't need a coach. I'll just sit by myself in my room and I'll just like wonder about my situation and think about it. Good luck with that. If you have a coach, another human being in front of you, just listening is going to help you. But number two, if they're a 3P grounded coach and they start asking you certain questions, my God, that is going to really get you to see things you couldn't see before. So that's the middle.
That's awesome, Dominic. Keston, was that helpful to you? I'm sure that was. We are at 2 minutes. I don't know how everyone else is for time. Do we have any other quick questions? Or not necessarily quick, but any other questions? All right, Keston says thank you. Okay, good stuff, Keston. So now's the time. Questions, anyone? Let's see, let me go through here.
Yeah, I'm checking out. Yeah.
I can't tell. I see Marnix leaning in. I'm not sure if that's a question or not there. Can't tell. Oh, let's see what we just got. Penny says, really helpful, Dominic. Awesome. Keston says, awesome. Thank you. Mecca Jones says, ooh, they get to hear themselves. I love it. Lucy Palmer, I just learned more than I did in a year-long program. Awesome. Wendy Williams says, thanks so much. Great teaching. Were we teaching? I guess, Dominic.
It was teaching. This was teaching. Absolutely.
Yeah. So does anyone have any other thoughts? Any other questions? Anything that you'd like to share from your own experiences of coaching? And while you're thinking about that, I can share a bit of a story of coaching someone. And I'm very new to this coaching game still. But I was trying to coach someone, and then the next thing I knew, I was having a 3P conversation with them. And the next thing I knew, the coaching had fallen apart, and it took me, I could actually go through the diagram, the analysis of my coaching conversation with them, and it took me about 5 minutes to get back into a coaching mode, all because I thought I had something to add that I thought would be helpful to them. It was quite disastrous. It was very entertaining. This is really great. Lots of tips from
Well, Michael, you're pointing to this idea of practice, and that is coaching is a skill. It is a skill in the world of form. This is a profession. And one of the things I think is unhelpful in the 3P community is the statement that the three principles are all you need. So as a human being, the three principles are all you need, and everything is working by the three principles, including effective coaching. So is soccer, so is plumbing, so is being a lawyer, right? And the three principles are not all you need to be an effective plumber or electrician. I wouldn't hire you if that's all you had in terms of a deep grounding in any of that. And for some reason, people think that the 3 principles are all you need to be an effective coach. It is a profession. There is a distinction called coaching, and it's helpful if you know what that is. You know how that is structured. You know whether you are doing that or you are doing something else. That is all very helpful if you're going to be effective as a coach. So there is a lot more than you need than just being deeply grounded in 3 principles. And here's the thing you don't need, is you don't need to be a coach. So you don't need to be a coach. If you're not interested in coaching, you don't need to be a coach. You can, 3 principles are all you need to be a good human being. They are all you need to be a good friend to others. They are all you need to potentially be helpful to other people. I'm just not so sure you could coach anybody. And
Dominic, hold on.
You don't have to.
So this is just come in from Pam. So is it worth taking a non-3P coaching course, even though it uses a different way of coaching?
Well, I have never seen a non-3P coaching course using a different way of coaching. Coaching programs teach you coaching. I'm not sure that 3P programs are teaching you coaching. So most 3P programs are developing your grounding in 3 principles. And they have various levels of effectiveness in actually equipping you to coach. Now, there are no 3P grounded coaching programs that are accredited through the International Coach Federation. So, there's different reasons for that, but it's hard to say whether you are getting the principles of coaching in any sort of a 3P program. So definitely you can look at coaching programs that are accredited. If you email or private message me too, I can kind of help you assess whether they're worth spending your money on. If you go like really crappy coaching programs, what you get is tips, techniques, the structure is the magic. It's all bullshit, right? Like there is no magic in a structure. Many of these people sell the proprietary coaching conversation, proprietary models, all of that. What I've learned is as you keep diving into pure coaching, what pure coaching is understanding what makes it effective, stripping away any technique or process or any of that. And as you go to pure coaching, you will see really good alignment with 3P. If you get stuck at a level of novice, which is like, well, my coaching program said that, we have inner saboteurs and we have, I don't know, there are coaching programs like this, by the way. They say, when you coach for them, everybody's got these inner saboteurs and they've got and so they've got these models and these weird things, right, that they tell you to sort of like use. So somehow you got to like skip over the structure and form of it to get underneath to the pure part of it. And yeah, that's the only thing I'd say.
If we had more time, I'd pick on you a little bit for the semantics of skip over. Right?
Oh, good. Okay, so good point.
And Dominic, if you're going to address that, I want to get to Wendy. She's had her hand up in a second. So why don't we do Wendy first?
Yeah.
Wendy, go for it.
Okay. So all I was just going to say is that I often was confused myself. This helped me, and I just offer it up, that the 3 Ps are really talking about the fact that sometimes the weather is sunny, sometimes the weather is rainy, sometimes the weather is awful, sometimes the weather is, changing the wind, it's getting cooler, and that just happens. That's just life. That's life on the planet Earth. It's just weather. Coaching is learning how to maybe predict the weather a little bit better, or how to say, I know when to schedule a good ski trip. It's going to be during when there's snow rather than in July in Boston when there's probably not snow. So I'm going to leverage my understanding of weather patterns in order to accomplish something. So I might be a really good tour guide if I scheduled those ski trips during December in Boston rather than in July. So I'm optimizing my understanding of weather, but I'm not using weather I'm using my knowledge of weather. Does that make sense? So the coaching is using one's knowledge of mind, consciousness, and thought in order to be effective as a, tour guide or whatever. So anyway, I just hear that a little bit of a distinction there when people are saying a 3P coach versus a non-3. Nobody can be anything but a 3P anything in the world. And it's just by virtue of the fact that we've all been introduced to the concept of the 3P. Do we even use that word? Because we've been using them since we were born, before we were born, and we will all our lives. We've always been using them. We just didn't identify that.
Right. So very good. And by the way, a good example of you will incorporate into coaching the level of your grounding in 3P or in anything else. So you'll just incorporate, it'll just come into the coaching, the level of your grounding. So Wendy, for example, on what you said, there could be, say, another 3P coach or whatever. The way they might approach that is to say, and by the way, and again, it all depends on the client and what it is that the client wants. What the coaching could be about is going skiing regardless of the weather. Is how do I, right? So someone else may, as opposed to looking at that, they may say, but you're only gonna do, and don't worry about it, you're just gonna take your grounding and what it is you see, and you're gonna build it into your coaching. Because when you work with a client, what you're gonna see is whatever you can see. And that's the only thing you'll ask questions about, right? As your grounding changes or shifts or you see something else, what you may say to the client is, okay, so what's the weather got to do with X, Y, Z? And, have you seen that there are people who actually do this regardless of the weather? And you might explore that too, right? So the 3P part, it's interesting because if you do these things in parallel, the stronger you're grounded in 3P, the more effective you'll be as a coach. However, you do have to be a coach. because the stronger you're grounded in 3P does not make you a coach. It won't make you a plumber, right? But if you are a plumber, you'll be much better if you go more deeply grounded in 3P. If you're a lawyer, you'll be better. If you're a mediator, you'll be better as you go. But it doesn't stop or excuse you from developing this skill in the world of form. And the comment I wanted to make to what Michael said is, practice turns out to be the best way to develop your coaching skill. And so even the International Coach Federation, part of what they do is they accredit you by saying, well, tell me what coach training program you did. Is that an accredited program? Because they want to know what it teaches and they want to make sure it's teaching all this. They get you to, there's a knowledge exam. There's stuff they do to make sure you know what this is. However, as you move in ICF from a beginning credential through to mastery, a huge part of the difference has to do with practice. And so how they determine a beginner level compared to a mid, compared to a mastery, is how many hours of paid coaching do you have? Mm-hmm. Notice it's paid coaching. These are not nice chats you have with friends. These are conversations somebody pays you for. And how many hours of those conversations? At the highest level, more than 2,500 hours paid coaching. So imagine the kind of practice that you would have working with people who pay you. And so they pay you because whatever it is you're doing, however you figured out how to do this, is making a difference and an impact with them. So they have a training component, but the practice component is huge. And as Abraham Hicks says, words don't teach, only life experience can. And so that's why the practice part is what's actually going to make you better and better and better as a coach. Because you're going to learn more that way than any other way.
Yeah, in my experience, not that you need me to agree with you, Dominic, but that's so true. And having the paid component in there takes it to a different level as well. Even if it's just a couple of dollars that are being exchanged, there's a very different responsibility when money is being exchanged than when you're doing it pro bono. If we have time, there's a couple of questions from Kent and Keston. A few people are asking about recommendations for coaching programs. Keston is looking at the solution focused program, which is the one that I just did and that you have, or one of the ones that you have. And she came across a coactive model. The question is, do you know if there is a coaching modality that is more aligned with 3P?
Okay, so
coactive, last one, folks.
Yeah, coactive model, which is done by the Coaches Training Institute, CTI, the largest coach training organization in the world. It's, it depends on your grounding, whether it's going to annoy you or not, because in the coactive model, they do have...
There you go. Let's go there.
They do have processes and all sorts of somewhat mindsets and things that they put into it, which are just not true, but they are ways of seeing it which can be helpful or not helpful. So nothing wrong with this. The certifications I've done, they've been all over the map in terms of, my first one was a certification in executive coaching, tons of structure and elements about that after 3P, you realize you can drop a lot. But the one that I came across after, I think I had 2 certifications, which were all ICF accredited, was I came across the solution-focused coaching, which Michael right now is in the midst of, and we've shared about it within the group. That one is really cool. So very good alignment with the beliefs. I notice I use the word because maybe from their side they might call beliefs. We actually know it's true, but they come at it with, the client has the answers, and the answers are found by exploring solutions, not problems. And this is where, in 3P, Sydney Banks, Linda Kearing tells us his first student after his enlightenment, she went to him to say, I've got all these problems and his response was, well, that's all in the past now, dearie. That was the extent to which he addressed any of the problems that she was coming with. And so the solution-focused coaching is really exciting because it does look future-focused, forward-focused. It puts so much belief in the client to have all of the answers, so much in there around not interfering with the client. As a coach, you need to stay out of it and really, bring it out of the client. So that's my current favorite.
I would second that, Dominic. Again, not that you need me to do that, but yeah, the SF course that I did with Hey Sun Moon and Peter DeJong was amazing. It's so much synergy with 3P. It was quite amazing.
There are a lot of those, by the way, in the world. Michael did one in Toronto, but I can tell you there's lots in Europe. In fact, I would say solution focus is even bigger in Europe, and they have even stronger practitioners, more practitioners in Europe. The US for sure has a ton of them. So we could find...
How'd you get it?
We can help you find those if you and if you're gonna spend your time to do some sort of a coach training, my bias is that you should make sure you get something which is recognized by the International Coach Federation, because just in case you want to, at least you will have recognized training, and ultimately you'll be able to get a credential with the ICF. And that will just save you a lot of breath and a lot of, if you ever work in organizations or anywhere else, all you'll need to say is, I'm credentialed with the International Coach Federation, and then they'll know exactly what that means, and they won't have to try and figure out whether you're an actual coach.
Awesome, Dominic.
Yeah.
All right, it's 1:15. if anyone found this valuable, I mean, I'm hoping everyone did. It sounds like there was value in it. Let us know in the book club pages, and maybe what we can do is impress upon Dominic the value of continuing this into maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 or a series of these conversations. Because I think a topic that would be worth looking at is the difference between problem solving and solution focusing.
Yeah, that would. And it would answer more of the question about what do you do in the middle? Right? So there is so much we can say in the middle, and how do you spend time in that middle? Yeah.
Yes, more please. This has been super helpful. Next week, I don't know, guest, we'll see what we can do. All right, everyone. Because it's time, we're going to say goodbye. You can unmute yourselves, and we'll do a collective goodbye that, where no one really hears one another, but it feels good to do that. So
Thanks, Dominic.
if you are, I've unmuted every, hold on.
Thank
Stop
you,
pressing
bye.
anything.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. We'll
Thank
see
you,
you all
bye.
soon.
Later.
I'll have
Bye-bye.
this posted in the next hour or so.
Thank you. It's been
Thanks,
wonderful.
everyone.
Bye.
There we go.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.